So let's go ahead and get into the information today for time management. I wanted to do this because I think I do a lot of mental health stuff, I do a lot of self-care stuff, but I wanted to kind of inject a few practical tools, a few practical tips on just how do you manage your day to day? Because I think a lot of us get into these roles as caregivers and the needs increase, the tasks increase, the responsibilities increase, and what was manageable in the beginning may not be manageable now. And so you're kind of stuck in this rut of what am I doing wrong? Or, this isn't as easy as it was before. And being mindful of the time that we spend and how we allocate time to the tasks that we need is a great way to kind of combat some of the burnout that we may be experiencing or brushing up against, right? We feel like we don't have enough hours in the day. There's just so much going on. Oh, I just realized my pillow's wonky. It's going to bother me all day. So I'll just do this. Okay. So practical tips. This will be recorded, of course, and put on our website. So if you don't want to jot anything down during the presentation, it will be available for you to rewatch later on this week once we get the recording and get put on our YouTube channel and also alabamarespite.org. So the first step in effectively managing our time is really just trying to figure out what are we spending our time on, right? Sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but I'll think, oh, I've got this long list of things I need to do. It's going to take me all day. I don't want to do it. And you procrastinate. And then by the time you sit down, you realize, wow, this only took me 3 hours, right? Or this only took me 45 minutes. And yet all day was just kind of built up thinking about this thing that you have to do. But when we understand the time that we're spending, like if you think about time as a resource and you're trying to budget your time, just kind of knowing where it's going is the first step in managing it more effectively. So we do what we call a time audit, okay? So this is something you can do manually. You can use a time tracking app. There's a lot of those on the market right now. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, and you do what works best for you. But this is just a simple exercise just to be like, what am I doing with my time? Okay, so the first one, write down your goals for the week. Okay, I don't know about you all, but I find this simple step so much more freeing than I anticipated in the beginning because I realized, I'm spending X amount of time doing things um, that are just really kind of like distractions. Like I'm really bad about getting on like the internet and Googling things and researching things and scrolling and all that stuff. And then before I realize it, like half my day's gone and I haven't done anything, right? So a time audit can be very eye-opening. So we just write down our goals for the week. Start by writing your main goals, and then we can prioritize them throughout the week. We can kind of allocate them to the days of the week. Okay. So emails, meetings, calls, doctor's appointments, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Number two, track your time accurately. Okay. So keep a record of how you spend your time. And we don't want to just guess. Okay. So the first time is really just tracking your actual time spent on tasks. Okay. Not your desired time, not your estimated time, but what are you actually doing? Okay. So keeping it as accurate as you can is going to help you effectively manage your time later on. So if you want to track your time manually, start a timer when you start working on a task and stop it when you finished. Otherwise, you might forget what you did. Step three, analyze your time usage, right? Now that you got a record of your days, we want to look for patterns. Okay, so what are your most productive times? Where are you wasting the most time? And that'll help you to create better daily schedules. Okay, so for example, if you find you spent 3 hours online while you had urgent work to do, take note of that, right? Prioritize your tasks based on the deadlines and how they're going to affect other people, right? When you're working on caregiver time, it's not always your time, right? So I have this little window of time to do X amount of tasks before I have to prepare lunch or before I have to take so-and-so to the doctor's appointment, right? So we want to prioritize based on the deadlines and how it's going to impact your caregiving overall. And you want to take document of what tasks can be delegated. Okay, some of you don't have people in your space that can, take over for you or kind of help you with this, but some of us do, and we haven't really taken advantage of that yet. And so hopefully by the end of this, you start to kind of soften towards that idea. So if you're spending too much time on specific tasks, you'll recognize that and you can use that to manage your time better. And then step 4, plan and prioritize your work. Now, all of this really will only take you a few minutes in the beginning of the week to do once you've kind of tracked it for like a week, right? So after you analyze your time, you can create those schedules that work best for you, and you'll know how long a priority task is going to take and which tasks or which can help you plan more effectively. Identifying common distractions, right? Like I said before, for me, it's always Googling something. I go on these little rabbit holes about, brain science or anthropology or whatever I'm kind of hooked on for the week. And it's not bad that I do those things, but if I have other things that are more of a priority, I can't be doing that all day long, right? So we want to schedule our most important tasks during our most productive hours to minimize these distractions, okay? Some of you are way more productive in the morning. Some of you, as soon as the sun goes down, that's when your energy kicks in. So you're going to work on what works best for you. And I also know depending on your dominant hormone, right? So if you have a testosterone dominant hormone system, you're going to be more energetic typically in the morning, and you're going to kind of taper off in the evening. But if your system is estrogen dominant, you're going to be on a 28-day cycle typically. And so for me, I like to pack all of my high priority things during the first half of that cycle where I have more energy. And then the later half of that cycle is typically for the less urgent or less energetically consuming tasks. Okay, so you're going to try to figure out what works best for you. So some things you might want to do: set aside time to train somebody to do tasks, right? That can be time consuming in the beginning, but in the long run, it'll save you more time, right? So if you have a loved one who maybe doesn't want to do medications or doctor's appointments or what have you, but they're really good at other household tasks, right? Or they're willing to help as long as you give them some guidance on how to do these things. Grouping similar tasks into one block of time, right? So I like to do like if I'm going to cook a meal, I also do kitchen cleanup and kind of in the same block. Scheduling your most complex tasks when you feel most productive, okay? Okay, so another tip for time management is called the Pareto principle or Pareto principle. I've never heard it, so I've just tried to sound it out myself. But it's also referred to as the 80-20 rule. So this can be really useful for caregivers, but the principle is basically saying that roughly 80% of our outcomes come from 20% of effort. Okay, so this can mean that a small portion of your effort can lead to the majority of positive results in your caregiving duties. Okay, so it's kind of like a little bit of what was I going to say? A little bit of pre-planning can go a long way. That's actually, an established rule for time management. So some ways that you can apply this 80-20 as a caregiver, and these are just some examples. So again, identifying those key tasks, right? Focus on the 20% of tasks that have the greatest impact on the well-being of the person that you're taking care of, right? So that could be medication management, regular communication, right? What do you need from me? How are you feeling? Or specific types of support that significantly improve their quality of life. Okay, so those are the things that you want to prioritize, right? The next thing, self-care, okay? We have to schedule self-care. We can't just say, when I have time, I'll get to it. You will not have time, okay? Because if you let that little open space of whenever, like this random magic time that's going to just appear that you can do all these fun things, you're going to fill it with tasks because that's just the nature of the beast, right? So prioritizing self-care, making time for it on the schedule is going to help you in the long run, okay? We know this is very demanding, right? And it's not uncommon for you all to neglect your own needs while you care for another person, okay? That's not a moral failing. That's not me judging you. That's just the statistic reality, right? So when we recognize that a small amount of self-care can make a huge difference and we prioritize that, we can maintain better energy levels, right? Our emotional well-being is a lot more regulated, right? Prioritizing activities that recharge us physically, mentally, emotionally, okay? 20% of your time doing that is going to yield you 80% results. Why? Because you're going to not be so depleted. You're going to have those additional energetic and mental resources to do what needs to be done. Okay, so it's like filling up the gas tank, right? That's literally what you're doing. Then, of course, leveraging support networks, right? Identify the 20% of your support network that can provide the most help. So, family members, friends, community resources, and really try to engage that regularly and delegate tasks when appropriate and when possible. Again, I know this isn't everybody's reality, but I also know that many of you have had people offer and you didn't really know what to say or didn't really know how to accept that help. So if you have people in your circle who are constantly saying, tell me what needs to be done, how can I help? Engage those people. Okay. Don't be afraid to take them up on their offer. Okay. I don't know about you all, but I don't offer help or resources that I'm not willing to give. And I think most people are like that. So if somebody's actually asking, hey, how can I help? They probably really want you to show them what it is that they could do to help. Okay. So don't be gun shy when it comes to that kind of thing. Okay. And then focus on effective communication. So spending time on essential conversations that lead to better understanding of your care recipient's needs. Okay. So listening to their preferences. What are they concerned about? Okay. That can lead to more effective caregiving. You may find out that you're doing things that they don't find as a priority, but you've prioritized them. And then neither one of you are really getting any benefit out of it. Right. So having those conversations can be really, really helpful. And then finally, assessing those needs regularly, analyzing what caregiving activities actually yield the best results. So that could be in adjusting your routines or changing strategies based on what works for you and your loved one. Okay. I know for me with my kiddos, things that they absolutely love to do that were big priorities for them when they were under the age of 10 are not the same as they are getting into those teenage years, right? But I can't keep operating off that system that worked then because it doesn't work now. So having those regular conversations and assessing those needs regularly can be very helpful. So when we concentrate on those most impactful tasks and interactions, you can work more efficiently, right? Smarter, not harder. That's what we're looking for. And that will lead to better outcomes for you and everyone else. And it can also help reduce caregiver stress and burnout, right? Next, setting SMART goals. So as a therapist, we do this often. This can be really beneficial for you all to help manage your time and your responsibilities while you take care of yourself, okay? So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, okay? If you just Google SMART goals, you'll get all kinds of stuff come up that can help you understand this concept and also help you create them for yourself. But I'm going to go through them a little bit here today. So instead of saying, I want to take better care of my health, okay, that's a great goal. That's a broad goal, though, right? So we want to be specific. And so we could say, I'll walk 30 minutes every day. Okay, so you see the difference in that, where I want to take better care of myself to an actual specific goal. I'm going to walk 30 days or 30 minutes every day, right? The next one is measurable. So we want to make sure that we can track our progress. So for instance, I'll prepare healthy meals for myself a few days out of the week, right? 3 or 4 days out of the week. And that allows you to kind of measure how many meals you're actually preparing, right? Not I need to eat better, but we're setting an established goal, right? We're establishing a goal. I will eat, 3 meals out of the week that are going to be healthier for me, right? And then achievable. This one's really important because sometimes I think we have these big pie in the sky ideas. We set these goals really, really high and they're harder to achieve. And then we get very discouraged and we give up, right? So realistic goals that are based on your current situation. So for example, instead of saying, I'm going to attend a yoga class every day, right? No, you're not. No, I'm not. We're not going to do that, right? So we can say, I'll go once a week or I'll do yoga at home, right? That makes more sense for most of us, right? And then if and when you can build, but we're starting small, okay? Next is relevant. So we want to choose goals that align with our overall responsibilities and our self-care needs, okay? So I'll schedule 1 hour of quiet time for myself 3 days a week, right? That's something you could probably do, especially after you've done your time audit. You can say, well, hey, during that time where I'm scrolling on TikTok and feeling like absolute garbage because everything's terrible, I can actually do some stretching, or I can read a book, right? You can do something else. But it's relevant because it acknowledges that the need for personal time and personal care is important, right? And then time bound. So we want to set a deadline to achieve these goals. So for instance, you can say, I'm going to read one book to unwind per month, right? So setting a clear time frame for your goal can be helpful, okay? The next method, the next tip I want to show you. Now, speaking of, you can use all of these. You can pick one. You can throw the whole thing in the trash if it doesn't work for you, okay? These are just invitations. They're not hard and fast rules, okay? But there is a method called the 4Ds method, okay? So this is basically having a daily to-do list that can help you stay organized and productive. The reality is, though, sometimes we make our to-do list way too long, okay? We have a week's worth of stuff we need to do, and we're trying to pack it into one day. And I know logistically, sometimes that's just the way it is. But I think more often than not, we think, I'm going to be really productive today and I'm going to knock all of these things out. And then you get to the third thing on your list and you're exhausted, and then you don't do it, right? Or, the inevitable distraction comes up because something has shifted and you need to reorient your attention somewhere else. And then there goes the to-do list, right? So a really long list can become very overwhelming. And again, we don't want to set ourselves up for disappointment. We don't want to set ourselves up for failure, quote unquote. We want to do these things kind of small in the beginning to build the confidence that we know is in there to do what needs to be done. Okay. So start each day by prioritizing tasks and setting a personal performance benchmark. Okay. So the 4D method. First one is do. Those are the tasks that are important and urgent, right? I have to do these things. I have to feed mom. I have to make sure that, things are, she's changed. I have to make sure her medication's taken care of, right? Those are things that have to be done, and often at a very timely manner, right? So those are our first ones, do. The next, defer. So what tasks are you wanting to do, but maybe they're not as important or they're not as urgent, right? That could be all kinds of things, like cleaning out the refrigerator, right? You know it needs to be done, but it doesn't have to be done urgently right this second, right? So you can defer some of those tasks. And then here's that word again, delegate, right? So tasks that are important but not urgent. So for me, if I don't have time to clean out the refrigerator, but I know it needs to be done, I'll kick my kid a couple bucks and she'll do it for me. She don't care. She's not doing anything, right? So I can delegate that to her. And that way it gets done and nobody's out anything, right? And then finally, delete. So I think this is one that we kind of skip over because everything has to be done. So the thought of like just deleting a task just doesn't sound right in a lot of ways. But tasks that aren't important or aren't urgent, you can just delete those things, right? It's something I was thinking about doing, but it's not a big deal. And so that can just be kind of tossed to the time management gods, right? So focusing on completing essential tasks and then working across these columns if you have time afterward, okay? So any tasks that aren't completed that day can just be transferred to the following day's lists, okay? And it's very important that you experiment to find a system that works best for you, okay? These are, again, just frameworks. They're scaffolding, they're suggestions. But you might find that this method is absolute garbage and it doesn't work for you. And that's okay, okay? This could be a godsend for you, right? And that's okay too. Setting time limits. Okay, so this is one that I didn't know existed until I built this training for you. There's something called the Parkinson's law. And at first I thought this doesn't make any sense. But then the more I looked into it, I thought, okay, now I can see how this plays out in my own life. Okay. So the main premise of Parkinson's law is that tasks tend to grow in complexity the longer we give ourselves to do it. Okay. So what does that mean? If I give myself a week to finish something, like I'm going to clean my laundry room, okay? The never ending story, right? I give myself a week to finish that. It might only take me an hour or two to complete the task, right? But I've given myself a week to do it. And so that 1 hour task is going to grow more complex, requiring more time and resources than were originally needed, okay? This can also lead to procrastination because we might leave that task. Well, I have a whole week to do it. I'm going to put it off. I'm going to put it off. I'm going to put it off. And then here comes your deadline and you haven't done it yet. So then what happens? Here comes the anxiety. Here comes the stress. Here comes the shame, right? Then you're rushing to get something done. Or if you're like me, you're thinking about it all freaking week, but you're not doing it. You're stressing out about it every day. Oh, I got to get that done, right? So procrastination can definitely be, you know, productivity overlord kind of thing, right? Just kind of like right there in your face all the time. You're thinking about it, you're just not doing it, right? So leaving tasks until they're due, you might feel initially relieved that you've got plenty of time to do this thing, but then you put it off as long as possible. And then the task becomes more daunting and it requires much more mental energy than it should. And so it can become that stress and that anxiety source that we are trying to avoid in the first place, right? And then we find ourselves finishing that task and we feel this sense of relief, but also wonder why this project became such a mental burden, right? The extra time of that task often isn't related to the task itself. It's just mental stress caused by trying to, or by worrying about getting it done, right? So things become harder to complete when more time is given them. That's basically the Parkinson's law in a nutshell, okay? So if we just allocate 1 or 2 hours to get that task done, then we're going to get that task done and not have to expand the thought throughout the whole week, right? Or if you say, I'm going to give this task 2 hours instead of one, then that time is going, it's going to actually take 2 hours to get it done, right? But if you say, well, this is a 1 hour task, I'm going to get done in 1 hour, then boom, you've got it done, right? So we can use our time audit to identify those daily activities that took longer than expected, right? And then start to set timers maybe or set time constraints on those specific tasks. And this will help you improve your focus so that you can work more quickly and more efficiently, okay? So here's a good example. If that sounded kind of convoluted, let me compact it here. So going through emails, okay? Say you got a lot going on. And so you want to get to the emails, but it can take all day long if you don't set a specific time to do the emails, right? So say I'm going to set 1 hour out of the day to do this and then stick to it, okay? And if you still find that you're going beyond that set time limit, just examine your workflow, right? Was I actually checking my emails for an hour, or was I clicking on all the sales and all the, you know, the spam and all that stuff that we get, all the marketing emails, right? Or we're going through and getting the client portals and the doctor's offices and all those things that are actually important. Are we focusing on those, or are we just dilly-dally and spending time playing on the internet, right? So that's how that rule works. And then this one, I love this one because it's so crucial and it's so often overlooked, right? Managing our expectations, okay? So when learning time management skills, we have to have a realistic outlook on what we can actually achieve in one day or in 1 week, okay? You can sit down all day long and write out all the things that you feel like you need to get done, that need to be done, that haven't been done, you know, and by the end of it, you've got 14 pages that includes, you know, re-roofing the house, cleaning out the garage, you know, all these things that, you know, you're realistically not going to get done in a week, right? So if we have 18 tasks allocated for one day, how many do you really think you could get done, right? Wishful thinking can really get us in a rut because we think, well, I didn't get all this stuff done. I didn't do anything with my day, even though you've been working the whole day, right? But you only got through maybe 4 tasks. And then you feel bad because you didn't do all the things that you said you wanted to do, right? So no matter how well anyone plans, we also have to be aware, hey, unexpected tasks are going to crop up during the day, right? Emergencies are going to happen, right? You may end up with a kiddo who's just decided they're not going to cooperate all day and they need to be in your lap all day, right? Otherwise, they're going to throw a fit. And so then that just throws your whole day off, right? You can't do those things. So taking the perspective that that's just inevitable, right? That's part of the life. And then factoring in some time with those daily schedules can help, right? So you may have a to-do list that if it was just you by yourself, you can knock out 5 or 6 things, right? But it's not just you and yourself. You don't have the whole day. You might have, enough time to realistically manage 2 of those things, okay? And if you say, well, I'm going to do 2 instead of 5, and then you've got extra time because you didn't have to pivot, you didn't have to deviate, then hey, you've got extra time, right? But to say, I'm going to get these things done, and then the world decides, hey, we need you over here instead, you have to allocate for those little things, right? That can really put your schedule back, okay? So time management skills ensure that you plan for and handle the unexpected life stresses and get you back on track faster, okay? Technologies can really help with your time management, okay? We all know that it's going faster and faster every year. It seems like every month there's some new technological advance that's being marketed to us. Some of them are amazing, some of them aren't, but there are a lot of things that we can take advantage of to help just kind of release some time in our everyday lives that adds up, right? It might be kind of intimidating for some of you to try some of these new technologies, but just like anything that we learn, it's going to be awkward at first, but we will acclimate to it, right? And it can really be helpful. So don't be intimidated, okay? So the first one, you're probably all very, very familiar with patient portals, right? Most healthcare providers have a patient portal. That's available to you as a care partner, a parent, a caregiver. If you're managing somebody else's healthcare, you probably have access to something like this, okay? So these portals can help you save time for activities that might require typically multiple phone calls to a doctor's office, right? So many will have options where you can just send a request for a prescription refill and ask questions about care plans. So there's no need for you to call the doctor's office and then sit on hold for 35 minutes, right? Or leave a message and hope they call you back, right? The patient portal can really help you access a lot of information you need and complete the tasks that you need to complete without ever having to have a conversation or wait for somebody to call you, okay? So take advantage of that if it's available to you. Pharmacy apps, right? So a lot of mainstream pharmacies like Walgreens, CVS, Costco, a lot of them have apps, right, on your phone where you can look at your prescriptions, look and see what needs to be filled, look and see what's ready to pick up, right? And that can save time because then you're not calling into the pharmacy and you're not wasting trips to the pharmacy when your prescription isn't ready, right? I think most of us are probably using these already, but for those of you who are not, I highly encourage you to try them out and see if they make a difference for you, okay? It makes a difference for me because you can set those little reminders where they'll actually like send you a notification or they'll email you and say, hey, you can get this prescription refilled. You're coming up on the refill date. And for me, managing 5 children with ADHD, we forget, okay? It's because like the medication that's supposed to help them with their, ADHD symptoms requires you to not have ADHD symptoms to keep up with it, right? So it's kind of right? But having those little reminders can be very helpful. And then finally, delivery apps, okay? A lot of these delivery services kind of surfaced after the COVID pandemic, right? Um, and they just kind of stuck because it just seems so convenient and everybody enjoyed it. Everyone was participating. And so a lot of them just kind of stuck around even after the pandemic and the lockdowns and stuff. So we can do things like Instacart to deliver your groceries, right? Um, Restaurants, right? We can do the DoorDash and that kind of thing if we want to. And that can help save time shopping and cooking. Okay. Now, as far as the whole, like the Instacart or the Shipt and that kind of thing, most of those do charge either a fee for each delivery that you do, and some of them will invite you to do like an annual membership. So you pay like a larger fee. Like I think it's like Instacart's like $100 or $50 at the beginning of the year, and then your deliveries are free for the rest of the year. And so depending on how frequently you use it, you'll just have to kind of do a cost benefit kind of analysis and say, is this actually worth it for the amount of time I would use it? I have used it in the past. I don't use it consistently because I'm one of those people where, I like to pick out my own produce and I like to pick out my own meat and things like that. But it has been helpful in the past, especially if I'm sick or I'm down for the count or I'm just wiped from the day and could not even fathom spending another 5 minutes anywhere other than my bed. These have been very helpful for those days, right? And then digital calendars. So a lot of our phones already come with these calendars, but it can help you stay organized. You can set alarms for certain things. I know for me, I use an iPhone and I'll set with my whole family in the calendar and I'll set reminders to go off the day before we're going to do something, 2 hours before we're going to do something, and then 5 minutes before we leave because my kids need those, right? And it only took a few minutes to set that up, but it has become very, very helpful and useful because then I'm not the one telling everybody, let's get ready. I don't have to remind everybody, which alleviates my cognitive load, which makes me a lot more stress-free. Okay. So see what works for you. None of these might be your jam, and that's okay. But some of you may think this is really convenient and I'm going to take advantage of it, and so that I can use my mental energies towards something else, right? All right, last slide. I mentioned this a little bit before, but it's worth repeating. Please schedule time for your well-being, okay? Please, please, please. It doesn't have to be a big, intense regimen. It doesn't have to be anything particular that you're going to schedule this time for. Just have that time, okay? And then decide what you're going to do with it the day of if you need to, right? Your health might not seem like an obvious time management tip, but it is arguably one of the most important ones, right? Because we know this can be very hectic, right? Things can be moving, a lot of moving parts, a lot of needs that need to be met, right? So putting our needs to the side sounds more convenient because I have to do these other things, right? But it's really easy to neglect your needs over time, right? Doing it once in a while, when it's necessary, that's fine. But if you are constantly neglecting yourself, you're going to pay for it in the end. Okay. You're going to get burned out. You're going to get resentful. You're going to get frustrated. You're probably going to get sick, right? These things build up in your body. Okay. So it is crucial to schedule time for yourself so that your well-being doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Okay. No one can be productive when you're physically, mentally, and emotionally depleted. Okay. Only you can provide quality care, or you can provide quality care if you're healthy, right? So scheduling a break every 90 minutes throughout your day, even if it's just a 5-minute breather, right? Timer goes off, time for me to breathe. Timer goes off, time for me to drink some water. Timer goes off, time for me to stretch, right? Saying I'm going to rest at the end of the day can work for a lot of people, right? But incrementally throughout the day is going to prevent that end of the day exhaustion to the capacity that you're probably used to feeling it, right? It can help you maintain focus, keep productivity high throughout the day, and boost your energy levels without risking burnout, okay? Making time to eat, to exercise, make personal calls, right? Call your friends, call your family, step away from your duties just for a little bit, right? This is going to help you maintain the level of care that you want to maintain. Okay. So how do we take care of ourselves? Well, a no-brainer, reduce stress. Okay, Jenny, what's that even mean, right? I would love to reduce stress. Please tell me how, right? Um, Self-care helps you manage your stress levels because taking time for yourself, again, allows you to recharge. And that improves mental health and a greater sense of well-being. Okay. There are some of us who are navigating stressful situations, stressful relationships, stressful tasks that we really don't have to even have on our plate anymore. Right. But we feel obligated to keep them on there for whatever reason. Okay. Sometimes relationships sour and they don't serve you anymore, but we don't want to like let that go. And so we just continue to let that thing pile up, right? I'm not saying, in the call today and then call all the people in your life. So, well, Jenny said I need to break up because you get on my nerves, right? I'm not saying that. But we know there are some situations, some relationships, some obligations that are very, very draining to us and don't produce a lot of positive results. And so just taking inventory, right? What used to serve me that no longer does, and how can I reduce my involvement in that thing? Okay. Enhancing your physical health, right? Eating well, I think, is so important. And I'm not saying you have to be vegan or you have to be paleo or you have to be any of these fad things that are happening. What I'm saying is food is fuel. Okay. So if you are not fueling your body with energetic, like heavy energetic resources or nutrients, you're gonna run out of gas really fast. Okay. I know for me, if I start my day with, protein and fruit, I'm going to have a lot more energy to last me in the morning than if I ate, a bowl of ramen noodles or nothing at all, right? I just had 4 cups of coffee. Okay. And I do know finances play a big role in this. I'm not trying to shame anybody or say like, you have to go out and spend, $400 at the grocery store. But I'm saying incrementally smaller choices when available, when possible, can really make a big impact. Okay. Sleep, adequate sleep can be very, very helpful. Okay. That's how our brain kind of, um, you know, what's the word looking for? Like kind of resets, right? We sleep, we kind of detoxify a lot of things. Our memory shifts from, short term to long term. And so that kind of eliminates some of the brain fog. So get as much sleep as you can. I know some of you that's not possible because you have loved ones up all night and stuff. But if you can sleep, please take advantage of that. Okay. Sometimes we get to the end of the day and we're like, it's finally quiet. I can finally hear myself think. I don't want to go to bed. Right. That's that's very true, right? But don't do it every night. Okay. Um, and then if you can exercise, even if it's just walking, even if it's some light stretches in the morning or in the evening, that can really make a big impact on your overall health. Okay. Emotional resilience. So self-care practices like mindfulness, meditation, hobbies, right? Writing stories, playing in the garden, creating sketches, photography, anything like that, right? That enhances your emotional resilience. So emotional resilience is how resilient are you to emotional shifts in your environment and in yourself, right? Are you always popping off at the smallest inconvenience? Maybe you need to check your emotional resilience, right? Maybe you're stretched so thin that you don't have the reserves to be resilient anymore. So prioritizing that can be very helpful. So taking time for yourself allows you to be better equipped to handle the ups and downs of caregiving, okay? Because you're not stretched so thin. And then finally, stronger relationships, okay? So when you prioritize your self-care, this actually can help improve your interactions with loved ones, right? I know for me, if I don't feel regulated in myself, um, I'm not a very regulated mother, right? So my self-care is prioritized because my children are prioritized. And our culture likes to say, well, that's selfish, but it's not. Okay, because I know if I'm not good, they're not good. So I have to be good. And that requires me to enjoy hobbies and relationships and sleep, right? All these basic human things that we all have a right to. Okay. When you feel balanced and nurtured, you're more likely to communicate effectively, provide compassionate care, and that benefits everyone involved, right? You and your loved one. Okay. So time management can really be about those to-do lists, but some of these tips are more about building yourself those reserves necessary to be able to pivot when you need to be able to handle the unexpected, right? To be able to tolerate your loved one being cantankerous or having a meltdown, right? So it's very important that we invest in ourselves because it will impact every other aspect of our caregiving. Okay. All right, so I told you it would be a little shorter today. That is my information. I hope you found it useful. I'm gonna go ahead and stop my share and the recording.